microphone, and you heard none of my blethering. Marvellous. Okay, good morning. Welcome to Running Commentary, where I'm going to try and get through all of the unique new cards from the Final Fantasy Commander set, so that I can get ahead on this set review nonsense before the full standard set drops in a couple of weeks. Welcome to Monday Morning Magic. And we'll just see how we do. Okay, let's get some uptime. And running. Hey! Get there, and probably just going to stay there for the whole stream. We've got this, we've got that. Card the first. For reasons best known to wizards, there is not a way to neatly separate them by decks. If you want to know which of the 4 commander decks it's in, you need to look down in this corner where it will tell you which Final Fantasy set it's in. That will correlate, which Final Fantasy game this card is from, that will correlate to which commander deck you can find this card in. For any Final Fantasy fans who want to know what the heck this game is, this is Magic the Gathering. Welcome. It is one of the original trading card games. It has a 30-year history and deep and complex lore of its own, and mechanics that can apply to basically anything. I'm going to be doing this almost entirely from a Magic the Gathering perspective, because I know very little about Final Fantasy. So if the cards are flavor hits or flavor misses, I cannot adjudicate. I can only tell you whether or not the card as we see it is good in the game of Magic the Gathering. That's probably enough ado-a-done. Celes Rune Knight. 4 mana, 1 red, white, black. She is a 4/4 legendary creature, human wizard knight. When Celes enters, discard any number of cards, then draw that many cards plus 1. 0 is an acceptable answer. You can discard 0 and then draw 0 plus 1 cards. But when we see the rest of her rules text, we will understand why we want to discard things. Whenever 1 or more other creatures you control enter, if 1 or more of them entered from a graveyard, or was cast from a graveyard, put a +1/+1 counter on each creature you control. So she wants you to discard your cards, fill your graveyard up with things, and then find ways to bring them back out of your graveyard. I forgot that that was going to mess around like that for me. So the sort of iconic thing we want is something like Reassembling Skeleton, which has, for 1 and a black, return this card from your graveyard to the battlefield tapped, and you just find ways to keep putting it into your graveyard, bring it back, put a +1/+1 counter on all the creatures you control, put it in your graveyard, bring it back, repeat, repeat, repeat. The fact that she doesn't have any way herself to bring creatures back from the graveyard is... switch to this one. This a better sizing. You wanted me to do this. So, very interesting, has the potential. He's looking to do a couple of different things, being a combination of go wide, create a lot of creatures on the battlefield so that you can make them all big, but also get things in and out of the graveyard repeatedly. She's a very interesting card. I think she's a powerful enabler for a Mardu Reanimate strategy, and is an interesting commander in her own right, because she works differently to the normal Reanimate strategy of put one big thing into play and try and ride the game to the end off of that one giant monster. She is a much more incremental style of reanimation. Onwards. Cloud, Ex-Soldier, from the Final Fantasy VII deck, and for 5 mana, 2, a red, a green, a white. He is a legendary creature, human soldier mercenary, and is a 4/4 with haste. When Cloud enters, attach up to 1 target equipment you control to it. Whenever Cloud attacks, draw a card for each Whenever Cloud attacks, draw a card for each equipped attacking creature you control. Then if Cloud has power 7 or greater, create 2 treasures. So, for each different creature you control with an equipment on it, you get to draw a card. Then, if whatever is attached to Cloud is increasing his power to at least 7, you make some treasures. A Naya equipment commander is kind of new space. We've seen a lot of them in Boros. Adding green doesn't add a huge amount. There's a couple of interesting equipments that are green, but it mostly just enables you to ramp faster, get to your bigger stuff better, but Cloud's already giving you the treasures for that. I'm not enormously certain what green adds to your equipment deck. Let's have a quick look at destroys equipment. So yeah, there's a couple of green equipments that, like Belt of Giant Strength, is pretty decent. It turns Cloud into a 10/10. Costs quite a lot to equip unless you have other things already equipped. Bone Sabers is pretty good automatically. Oh no, because Cloud just cheats. So Belt of Giant Strength is an excellent card to go with Cloud, because you can just pay the 2 to get it in play, have Cloud enter, cheat past the equip for 10, and have Cloud immediately become a 10/10 haste, attack, draw a card, make 2 treasures. Okay, green has some pretty decent equipment, apparently. Good to know. Colossal Dread Mask. Quite a few of them with very high equipment costs as well. And you get to add things like Danither to pass your equipment back from the graveyard if they're blown up. Yeah, there's a few interesting things in there. Okay, good to know. But Cloud just wants to pick up a big sword, hit people with it, and then use that to leverage drawing more cards, creating extra mana to play more spells. I need to try and spend a bit less time talking about each card, or my voice is going to be completely shot. Grahacha, Scion Reborn. 3 mana, white, blue, black. Legendary creature, Cat Wizard. It's a 2/3 with lifelink, and the ability Throw Wide the Gates. Whenever you cast a non-creature spell, you may pay X life for X is that spell's mana value. If you do, create a 1/1 colorless hero creature token and put X+1/+1 counters on it. Do this only once each turn. So, on each player's turn, when you cast a non-creature, so if you cast, for example, a counter spell on your opponent's turn, search please. Oh, it's trying to search in green. That would help. Help if I was not trying to search green for a blue card. Oh, I removed the green. Okay. Breathe. Seems fine. We can get around this when... Yes. Thank you. So, the classic counter spell, counter target spell. You do that for 2 mana, and then that is a non-creature spell. So you may then pay 2 life. If you do, you make a 1/1 which gets 2 counters on it. So you pay X life to create an X+1 power and toughness creature. once each turn. So you want to be doing a lot of things at instant speed so that you can do the things on your opponent's turns as well. The biggest disadvantage to this is that it doesn't have any card advantage built in to replace all the spells you're casting, so you'll have to find some other way to do that. But the Rahacha has the potential to make you quite a large army for a relatively low investment, other than the life you're paying. Terra, Herald of Hope. 3 mana. A red, a white, and a black for a legendary human wizard warrior. He is a 3/3. And at the beginning of combat on your turn, mill 2 cards. Terra gains flying until end of turn. And whenever Terra deals combat damage to a player, you may pay 2 generic mana. When you do, return target creature card with power 3 or less from your graveyard to the battlefield tapped. So, mill cards, she becomes flying. When she hits someone, you can pay 2 mana and get some small power creature from your graveyard onto the battlefield. Important to note that it cares about power, not mana value. So, if I go to Advanced Search and I look up mana value greater than 6 and power less than or equal to 3, we will see that there are quite a few. I should have added some color selection to that. More color options. Playable with only. I should just do not blue, add not green, add MV greater than 6, power less than 3. There are 226 creatures that cost more than 6 mana that have 3 or less power. Admittedly, a lot of them are not good, but let's try and find something worth. Ooh. That doesn't work very well. Things like Archetype of Finality, where all your things suddenly have Death Touch. Or and an Evan card is pretty good. There's a always popular card, Aurelia the War Leader. When she attacks for the first time each turn, untap the creature you control after this phase as an additional combat phase. You can get her back with Terra and then start doing shenanigans. Oh. Ouch. Hello? Yeah. Terra wants to go through and just find all of the crazy high mana, low power creatures to do shenanigans. Anyway, enough of this nonsense. Tidus, Yuna's Guardian. A green, a white, a blue. He is a 3 mana, 3/3 legendary human warrior. At the beginning of combat on your turn, you may move a counter from target creature you control onto a second target creature you control. And whenever one or more creatures you control with counters on them deal combat damage to a player, you may draw a card and proliferate. Do this only once each turn. So, wants to be paired with name is escaping me right now. Not that. Advanced rules text. If +1 dead. I'll find me what I'm looking for pretty quickly. Really looking for. There we go. something like Caradora, if one or more counters would be put on a creature, put that many +1 +1/+1s instead. So you just start, you take 1/1/1 off something and put 2 onto something else. You find a load of creatures with flying or trample or just being really, really big. You draw cards, you proliferate, which means for every for any number of permanents, you may put proliferate. For any number of permanents, for each counter on that permanent, you may put an additional counter of that type on that permanent. So if something has a +1/+1 counter and you proliferate, you may put an extra +1/+1 counter on it. If something has a +1/+1, a death touch, a flying, and a stun counter, you may put a +1/+1, a flying, a death touch, and a stun counter. You would have to put all of them. You can't pick and choose from among the counters on the things. But if you have one creature with +1/+1 and one creature with stun, you can choose to proliferate the +1/+1 creature, but not proliferate the stunned creature. +1/+1 counter shenanigans have a place close to my heart, and by that I mean my wife is a huge fan of them, and also a huge fan of Final Fantasy X, so I've heard way too much about this card recently. It's going to be fun. It has the potential to be pretty scary. Proliferate is a powerful mechanic. Card draw is always good, and moving counters around allows for a lot of silliness. Onwards. Tifa, Martial Artist. 1 red, green, white. She is a 4-mana 4/4 legendary human monk. She has melee, which means whenever this creature attacks, it gets +1/+1 until end of turn for each opponent you attack this combat. So if she attacks alone, she gets +1/+1. If she attacks one player and your other creatures attack other players, she gets +3/+3. Whenever one or more creatures you control with power 7 or greater deal combat damage to a player, untap all creatures you control. So, some sort of built-in vigilance for all of your creatures. Then, if it's the first combat phase of your turn, there's an additional combat phase after this phase. So, the first time you attack, if you hit someone with a 7 power creature, then you get to take an extra combat. If in the first combat you manage to hit multiple players, 2, 3, 4, however many opponents you've got, with 7 power creatures, then for each opponent you get an additional combat phase, but you can only stack them up in that initial combat. But Naya is very good at having big stompy creatures. Tifa, her melee ability means that she can pretty easily get to 7 power, and that will stack every time she attacks. So if you have 2 combats, she'll attack as a 7/7, then that's a 10/10. If you have more combat, she'll get more bigger. Onward. Y'shtola, Knight's Blessed. 1 white, blue, black for a 2/4 legendary cat warlock. She has vigilance, and at the beginning of each end step, if a player lost 4 or more life this turn, you draw a card. And whenever you cast a non-creature spell, mana value 3 or greater, Y'shtola deals 2 damage to each opponent and you gain 2 life. So, the first that first ability, at the beginning of each end step, if a player lost 4 or more life this turn, you draw a card, is very political. You can, if you can encourage your opponent to attack that opponent, and then that opponent takes 4 damage, you get a card draw out of it. Also, it's any player, so even if they hit you for 4 damage, you get to draw a card. If you have effects in your deck that make you pay life for things, you get to draw cards from that. And then the second half helps you enable the first, and helps you stay alive. You cast non-creature spells, mana value 3 or greater, and deal 2 to each opponent, gain 2 life. There are a lot of very good non-creature spells with mana value 3 or greater. You just sit there and go, cast this, everyone get pinged, cast this, everyone gets pinged. I think she is going to be I don't think she will reach the level of a kill on sight commander, but I think she is definitely deserving of caution if she is on the battlefield across from you. I definitely want her in my 5-color Spellslinger deck, because almost every spell I cast that has mana value 3 or greater, and I can cast an awful lot of them. But she will find homes in a lot of Esper control decks as well. Onwards! Yuna, Grand Summoner. 1 green, white, blue. She is a 4-mana legendary human cleric and has 1 power and 5 toughness. She has the ability Grand Summon. Tap, add 1 mana of any color. When you next cast a creature spell this turn, that creature enters with 2 additional +1/+1 counters on it. So, helps you makes mana to cast creatures. Well, specifically and importantly, the mana that she generates does not need to be used to cast a creature, or so you can use her, tap her, use her to cast a card draw spell, draw a creature, play the creature, use entirely different mana to play that creature will still get the 2 +1/+1 counters. Which is very differently worded to a lot of similar effects and worth being aware of. And whenever another permanent you control is put into a graveyard from the battlefield, if it had 1 or more counters on it, you may put that number of +1/+1 counters on target creature. So, you've got something with some counters on, it dies, you can shift all those counters into +1/+1 counters on something else. Important to note that unlike similar effects such as the Ozolith, that Ozolith please, kind of. So this keeps the counters as the original type, whereas Yuna turns them into +1/+1 counters, but these effects will stack. So if you have something with 2 +1/+1 counters on it that dies while you have Yuna and the Ozolith in play, the Ozolith gets 2 +1/+1 counters, and Yuna will put 2 +1/+1 counters somewhere else. Right. Alicey Levelia. 2 and a white for a 3/2 legendary elf wizard. Partners with Alfinord Levelia, which means that when Alicey or Alfinord enter the battlefield, you can search your library for the other one. Alicey has first strike, and the second spell you cast each turn costs 2 less to cast. So you play her, and then you can immediately play something else for 2 less, and then next turn you cast your first spell full cost, the next spell costs 2 less. Big mana discounts are always appreciated. The second spell makes it somewhat restrictive, but that makes it interesting to try and build around. Auron, Venerated Guardian. That is a big sword. 3 and a white. For a legendary human spirit samurai, he is a 2/5 with vigilance, and whenever Auron attacks, put a +1/+1 counter on it. When you do, exile target creature defending player controls with power less than Auron's power until Auron leaves the battlefield. So, Auron attacks. Vigilance. Doesn't need to tap. Gets a +1/+1 counter. Gets to exile a 2 power or less creature until someone kills Auron. Then next turn, Auron attacks. Exiles gets a +1/+1 counter, becomes a 4/7. Exiles a 3 power or less creature. If you keep changing which direction you attack Auron with, you can accumulate quite a few creatures under him, and people will be cautious about getting rid of him, because When they do, they will give everyone back a pile of things, not just themselves. He has the potential to be quite an efficient recurring removal piece and a strong political tool. If you just always keep attacking the same person, then you're really incentivizing that one player to try and kill him. If you keep mixing it up, then everyone goes, no, we don't want Auron to die. Sure, I'll get back my things, but you'll also get back all of those things. Also good with someone like Isshin, who says, if a creature attacking causes a triggered ability to trigger, it triggers an additional time, which means with one attack you could exile a 2-drop and a 3-drop and get more counters. Human, Spirit, and Samurai are all cards that have a variety of cards that care about and support those creature types, so it is also worth keeping an eye out for ways to enable creature type payoffs. Champions from Beyond. X white enchantment. When this enchantment enters, create X 1/1 colorless hero creature tokens. There is a light party. Whenever you attack with 4 or more creatures, scry 2, then draw a card. And full party. Whenever you attack with 8 or more creatures, those creatures get +4/+4 until end of turn. So, army in a can, pay X, make X bodies. That is fine. Well, pay X +2, get X bodies. The first half, having to attack with 4 creatures to scry 2 and draw a card, is not great as far as rate goes. We have seen similar card draw for much lower requirements. It helps that Champions from Beyond is likely to give you that many bodies, but you are very vulnerable when you do so. The second part, full party, giving all of your attacking creatures +4/+4, is much more reasonable and much scarier. If you can reliably be attacking for 8 creatures, this card I think is quite good. If you're not, then it's fairly mediocre, unless you're just interested in the spend X, create X 1/1s, have potential payoff. Depends a lot on how many board wipes your opponents are likely to be playing. Chocobo Knights. 3 and a white for a 3/3 human knight. Whenever you attack, creatures you control with counters on them gain double strike until end of turn. Doesn't do anything by itself, but with the right supporting cards that have distributed counters all over your creatures, it makes your creatures a very, very scary proposition. Slow down slightly. Okay. Sid, Free-Flyer Pilot. For 1 and a white, he is a 2/2 legendary creature human warrior pilot. Equipment and vehicle spells you cast cost 1 less to cast. During your turn, Sid has flying, and for 2 and a tap, return target equipment or vehicle card from your graveyard to your hand. So, he makes a certain he is a 2/2, flies on your turn, makes some of your spells cheaper to cast, and can get those types of spells back from your graveyard if they've been destroyed. Those are all a reasonable pile of words if you are doing equipment or vehicle things. If you're not, it's not worth the faff. Sorry, I need to pause for a moment. May have been a mistake. Give me a minute. Let me see if my head comes back. Otherwise, I'm going to have to cut this very short. Let's up it. We will go slower. Cloud's Limit Break. 1 and a white for an instant. It is tiered, which means you must choose one additional cost. For an additional 0, destroy target tapped creature. For an additional 1, destroy any number of target tapped creatures with different controllers. For 4 white, so for a total of 4 and 2 white, you can destroy all tapped creatures. This is a very flexible card. 2 mana destroy target tapped creature is fine, it's not exciting, but it's not the worst rate. Destroy a tapped creature for each opponent is for 3 mana is a very nice flexible card, and destroy all tapped creatures gives you a lot of ability to play around by timing it to most affect the creatures that you care about destroying and leaving the ones you don't. Coin of Fate. 1 and a white. For an artifact, when it enters, surveil 1. For 3 and a white and tap it, exile 2 creature cards from your graveyard, sacrifice this artifact. An opponent chooses one of the exiled cards, you put that card on the bottom of your library and return the other to the battlefield tapped, you become the monarch. Important to note that you choose the 2 creatures in your graveyard as part of the cost, so your opponent has no opportunity to interact with that. Which makes this a remarkably powerful reanimation option. They put the scarier one back into your library, and the better one comes in tapped, and becoming the monarch means at the beginning of each of your end steps, you will draw a card until someone deals combat damage to you. Cyan, Vengeful Samurai. 6 and a white for a 3/3 legendary human samurai. He costs 1 less for each creature card in your graveyard, has double strike, and whenever 1 or more creature cards leave your graveyard, put a +1/+1 counter on him. So a 7 mana 3/3 looks terrible. Practically, this is more like a 3 or 4 mana 3/3 double strike that, in the right deck, is going to keep making him bigger and bigger and bigger. Thanks for the approval. I'm afraid that this stream may not go for very long. I am not coping very well with the walking today. Anyway, a decent aggressive card if you're doing enough graveyard shenanigans to take advantage of his cost reduction and power increasing. A very niche card. Let's just leave it at that. Dancer's Chakrams. 3 and a white for an artifact equipment, with Job Select. When this equipment enters, create a 1/1 colorless hero creature token, then attach this equipment to it. The equipped creature gets +2/+2, lifelink, and other commanders you control get +2/+2 and lifelink, and the creature is a performance in addition to its other types, and it equips for 3 mana. So, 4 mana, you get a 3/3 lifelink. and also buff your commanders with +2/+2 and lifelink. Downside is if they kill the hero it's attached to, you have to pay 3 to re-equip it, and you can't equip this to your commanders because it affects other commanders, so this has to be on something other than your commander to have the main payoff. A really interesting card design. I'm not sure. I think it is fine in an equipment commander deck. It's not exceptional, but it's very hard to assess accurately because of just how weird and unique this effect is. An equipment that comes in attached to something are reasonable cards. A 4 mana for a 3/3 lifelink isn't great. Giving one of your other creatures +2/+2 and lifelink is interesting. I don't know. This one is very difficult to assess. Elena, Turk Recruit. 2 and a white for a legendary human assassin. She is a 1/4. When she enters, return target non-assassin historic card from your graveyard to your hand. When she enters, return target non-assassin artifact legendary saga, okay, to your hand, and whenever you cast a historic spell, put a +1/+1 counter on her. Okay. So, she enters, gets something back from your graveyard to your hand, and then slowly gets bigger as you cast historic spells. This is not a very powerful card. Returning a historic card from your graveyard to your hand is fine, but quite restrictive. Even at 3 mana, that's fairly reasonable. Casting a historic spell, just play Yoshimaru. Is it Yoshimaru? I think it's Yoshimaru. Which is, whenever a legendary permanent enters, put a +1/+1 counter on it, and that only costs 1 mana. I don't know. If you find some way to do major if she didn't say non-assassin, maybe she'd be more interesting, but that restriction clause takes a lot of extra value out of her. If you find a way to do really dumb things with her, please let me know, but I'm not feeling it. Gata and Luzu. 2 and a white for a 1/1 with flash, legendary human soldier. When Gata and Luzu enters, choose target creature you control. If damage would be dealt to that creature this turn, prevent that damage, put that many +1/+1 counters on it. So, they jump in, say, that thing can't die, you get to block and make something huge. Reasonable effect, we've seen similar cards before, they're always very forgettable until they land in front of you and you go, oh right, that's bad news. Interesting little guys. Not really they're just something to surprise out of a combat. If you enjoy making your opponents regret attacking you, they're pretty good for it. General Leo Christoph. 4 and a white for a legendary human soldier who is a 2/2. When General Leo Christoph enters, return up to 1 target creature card with mana value 3 or less from your graveyard to the battlefield. Then put a +1/+1 counter on General Leo Christoph for each creature you control. So, 5 mana 2/2, terrible card. 5 mana that enters the battlefield, reanimates something, and then gets a minimum of +2/+2 because he is on the battlefield and the thing you just reanimated is on the battlefield. So now we've got a 5 mana 4/4 that's brought a small creature back into play. That's a lot better. And then he just scales with however big your board is. A pretty decent value card. Creatures mana value 3 or less is not huge pool of cards to get back from your graveyard, so you need to think fairly carefully about your deck construction before you decide to include him. Unless you're just interested in playing someone playing a million tokens, play this guy, he comes in with a million +1/+1 counters, because he does not care about that. You do not have to pick something to return, you can just have him enter and get a +1/+1 counter for each creature you control. Still need some sort of trample or flying or unblockable to make him actually effective, but interesting card. Heidegger, Shinra Executive. 3 and a white for a 3/3 legendary human soldier. At the beginning of combat on your turn, target creature you control gets +X/+0 until end of turn, where X is the number of soldiers you control. And at the beginning of your end step, create a number of 1/1 white soldier creature tokens equal to the number of opponents who control more creatures. So, if you have the fewest creatures, you get a 1/1 for each opponent. If you have more creatures than that player 2, but less than player 3 and 4, you make 2 soldiers. And then, at the beginning of combat, you get to make one of your creatures big. I don't think this card is particularly good at all. Only making one thing big, and not increasing toughness, is pretty mediocre. I mean, sure, you get to... I mean, I guess you just make one of your 1/1 tokens huge and make your opponent deal with it, but... So, generally, this sort of deck, you're making huge numbers of tokens, you're going to have more creatures than most of your opponents most of the time, so this last ability isn't going to come up very much, and if it is coming up, then you're not getting a huge amount of boost from the first effect. I am not convinced. Helitrooper. 1 and a white for a human soldier. It is a 1/2 with flying. Whenever this creature attacks, another target attacking creature gains flying until end of turn, and equip abilities you activate that target this creature cost 2 less to activate. So, you can give it equipments more easily, and it carries something else into the air with it. If you're playing an equipment deck, this is a pretty reasonable inclusion. And 2 mana for the when this attack gives something else flying is about the cheapest we've ever seen that. So if you're just looking to be aggressive and evasive, that's a pretty interesting combination. And no, I think I just need to cool this. This is not going great for me. Sorry for cutting things short. I will come back to this soon, hopefully. Bye for now. Hopefully I'll be feeling better for Wednesday. If I'm not here on Wednesday, well, you know why. See you.